It's been a long time coming for a couple of the debuts we're going to see here today, including a player taken as a steal in our very first draft class. Both of the players that will debut today, we knew when we drafted them would have a little bit longer of a journey to get to the MLB, but their journey ends right here as they make their MLB debuts. Of course, starting with Reyes, who, until we traded for Pringle just a couple episodes ago, was really the only high-profile lefty we had in the entire organization. And you see right away with his first at-bat, his hits per nine is really what has kept him in the minor leagues for so long. And it's honestly still not in a great spot, still in the 40s here, but with him being Rule 5 eligible this offseason, wanted to give him a chance to earn himself a spot on the playoff roster. I think we could really use a lefty addition to the rotation or into the bullpen, either one. If he has himself a solid September, and he does go through the first inning without allowing a run here, and he gets his first major league strikeout on a beautiful pitch there low in the zone, getting out Mayo. Mountcastle up next. This one was jammed inside, but he gets it past the glove of Sterling Thompson. That'll be extra bases for Mountcastle. Westberg up next, and he gets him swinging. Strikeout number 2 here. He definitely has some better strikeout stuff than a lot of the pitchers that we've drafted here in the franchise, and so that's always exciting. A good lefty who can strike batters out is very fun. And a nasty slurve gets Byron Buxton to go down for his third strikeout. I got to see that one again. Just a ton of late breaking action on that slurve. Fooled Buxton and looked really good doing it. Joe Mack hitting in the 9 spot here. Quick little ground out over to Thompson at third base. Top of the order back up for Baltimore. McCarthy got a hit his first time up, and he's doing so again. So at least one hit allowed in every single inning so far for Reyes. You're going to kind of expect that. You're probably going to get lots of guys on base. It's just what can he do after that. His pitcher clutch is a little bit higher than his hits per nine. Still not in a great spot, though, as he goes to that slurve again. And he's getting some guys chasing well outside of the zone with it. Nasty stuff in the debut of Reyes. Gets you really excited to have a lefty, a young lefty we can be excited about going forward here on the team. Has allowed 3 hits, but none of them across home plate, which is ultimately what matters. Now, the other debut that we're focused on here today is Reyes and Doe. Picked him in our very first draft class. Has always been a guy with very polarizing ratings, but his weaknesses have gotten all into the 50s at this point, and I think he is ready to make his debut. And could he earn that center fielder spot for the playoffs? I think he certainly has a good chance to do so. First at-bat, though, will be a ground out. Just to add an extra power bat onto the team, I think could be really exciting. And he's also a very good defender. It's just the arm on defense that you have to worry about. I mean, his fielding and his speed is very comparable to Logan Cerny, who's been an excellent defender at center field for us. You do sacrifice the arm, though, but you gain the power in exchange for it. So I think it's a real competition, and how Reyes and Doe does here in September could be the determining factor as we see Kyle Brown making a highlight defensive play to end the inning on the double play. One thing with Kyle Brown is, just compared to last year, he might not be hitting with as high of an average, but I'm so much more confident in him defensively this year than last year. I feel like he was making a lot of mistakes in watched games last year. Been very dependable as here he gets another opportunity to make a pretty routine play there for the first out here of the 5th inning. The Rockies finally get themselves a run on the board here in the bottom of the 4th, and there's strikeout number 5, continuing that 1 strikeout per inning pace so far in this inning. Buxton struck out last time. This time gets himself a hit over to left field, and the throw not quite in time to get him out. Would have required a pretty excellent throw to get him out, but it was possible. Joe Mack coming up after that. He gets a base hit as well. That's going to bring home the tying run for Baltimore. Back-to-back doubles for the Orioles here with the bottom of their lineup. Not what you love to see here with 2 outs here in the 5th. Jake McCarthy should end the inning, but the throw from Kyle Brown is offline just when you compliment a guy for how good he's been defensively this year. He goes and makes you regret it. Jackson Holliday the next up to the plate, and he gets a base hit to bring home another Baltimore run. And that's the thing with this kind of skill set that you see with Herb Reyes. With that low hits per 9, he has been excellent through 4 2/3, and now 3 runs on the board. And yes, I know 2 of them were courtesy of a Kyle Brown error. But it's still just, you'd like to be able to get that 1 out here, even with the error, and he does eventually do that here. 3 runs, though, allowed in the 5th. But, of course, you can't forget about that Kyle Brown error. That would end the day for Herb Reyes. 3 runs allowed through 5 innings. We'll see if those end up being considered earned runs or not, but if you consider, he's an error away from allowing just 1 run in 5 innings in his MLB debut, I think you have to be thrilled with that result from Herb Reyes. Reyes and Doe, on the other hand, still looking for his first bit of action at the MLB level. Only still just has 1 at-bat. Has not been a particularly good day offensively for the Rockies. His second appearance is here in the 5th. Is hitting in the 9th spot for now. Don't know if that's going to be permanent. Should he stay with the team for the playoffs? Just for the time being, put him in that Logan Cerny spot, and he does draw the walk there in the 5th. Back up in the 7th. Baltimore still leads 3-1. Reyes and Doe squeaks this past the infield just under the glove of third base. And the first major league hit coming here in his 3rd plate appearance. Already has a walk and a hit. I think you got to be happy with what we've seen from both of our young players making debuts here. Next plate appearance for Reyes and Doe would be in the 9th. Baltimore nursing a 1-run lead here. In addition to seeing Reyes and Doe's at-bat, we'll treat this kind of like a critical situation and watch the rest of the bottom of the 9th to see if the Rockies can either extend this game or walk it off entirely. Perez here, 3rd in the AL in saves, tied with the Athletics closer as well. Doe, a walk and a single. Does have some exciting power. Can he show it to us for the first time at the major league level right here? Fouls that 4th pitch off. 1-2 pitch is by Reyes and Doe. The first time he's struck out now. So a ground out, a strikeout, a walk, and a hit. Really just missing, the home run, and he's got a little bit of everything here in his debut. Let's get now to the top of the lineup now. Kyle Brown, not a good day for him. 0 for 4. And I know clutch doesn't come into this situation. I really feel like it should, Down 1, bottom of the 9th, even though no runners are on base, I feel like clutch should come into play here in the game. But, of course, it does not, so we will have to make do with his regular contact, although against lefties it is very good. There he gets hit, though. So a man on and 1 out for Clemente Herrera. He has a triple, a double, and a single. A home run here would not only win the game, but would have our first cycle here of the franchise. Clemente Herrera off the pitcher there, and he beats the throw to first base. Runner on first and second now. Perez would need to be removed from the game after getting absolutely beamed by that Herrera pitch. Logan Cerny now wearing number 16 for some reason. I don't know why over the last couple of episodes he's just started switching his number. I don't think anybody else is wearing 9, so why did he just stop wearing it all of a sudden? I'm not sure. We did add a lot of players. Some players we added that will not be showcased today are a couple of bullpen arms in Rich Walsh. And I'm forgetting the name of the other closer that we brought up. The guy that we drafted last year. Oh, what's his name? I forget. Sorry, this is poor work on my part. More focused here on this ninth inning. 102 miles an hour on that pitch by Bautista. 2 hits on the day for Murillo. So it'd be an excellent opportunity for one of our best players, Murillo, and Dorsey up after him. If we can just get one of these guys to come through with a massive play, the Rockies could come out of this game victorious with all that speed on first. A solid base knock could easily score 2. You can get a double-worthy play into the outfield here. 2-2 is the count for Murillo, and fouls off a slider to keep the at-bat alive. Would love a walk-off homer here by one of our 2 players. Not going to come from Murillo. He is not happy with that call there. I don't know if we saw Herb Reyes really use that part of the zone, so I don't know how that's been called in this game. Depending on the umpire, that could certainly be a ball, and Murillo thought it should be, but was definitely a call that you can't be super mad about there for strike 3 looking. So now it comes up to Neil Dorsey. Of course, another storyline for this episode is who wins MVP? We got the top 2 candidates right now. This whole season it's been Rafael Murillo in first place, Neil Dorsey in second. Will that be the case as the season goes along? Kind of just whoever has a better September is probably going to be the MVP of the season. Unfortunately, though, for our Rockies, can't come up victorious here in the 9th. Murillo and Dorsey just couldn't get something going here for us. Excellent seasons, but you can't win them all in the 9th. So Baltimore, 1 more hit and 1 more run will win this game. Now it's time to take a look at the minor leagues and how everyone's season ended up there. James Unger is the top-rated player currently in the minor league squad, and I think he's pretty dang close to a call-up. He ended up finishing off the year pretty dang well. He was in the 5s and the 4s in the ERA for most of the year. Really strong finish. Makes me excited for the prospect of him being able to come up to the league very soon. I think there's going to be a lot of turnover in our pitching staff in the next couple of years, maybe moving on from the veterans and letting the young guys cook. And Colorado native James Unger gonna love when he gets the opportunity to pitch in front of the Colorado faithful for the first time. His lifelong dream. Andrew Moore, he's somebody that we're likely moving on from. He just got the call down so we could get our young guys up. Anton Hernandez, another guy who I think isn't too far away. I think he's at least 1 more year in the minor league system, though. Maybe a second. It all kind of depends. I don't think he's Rule 5 eligible this next offseason, but it might be the next one after that. So if he is, then of course he's going to get a chance in spring training. Juan Rocha, very late in the season, got a pretty bad injury, fractured wrist, but I think he missed just a small handful of games because of it. Still got 500 plus at-bats at AAA this year. He got 20 home runs with that. Walked 85 times. He certainly, that 79 discipline is awesome. Got +6 this year with all of those walks. He's somebody that, with Omar Figueroa not really having the greatest year, I think Juan Rocha being close to the call-up is really, well-timed here. I think he's certainly ready for possibly getting a spring training invite this next offseason, see if he can impress in spring training. If not, probably just 1 more year in the minor league system until he is ready. Although, we have some openings for rookie spots next year that we're trying to get some picks with, and he's one of the best candidates for it. Gordon Pringle here was so good in 76 innings at AAA. My goodness, 1.76 ERA, sub 1 whip, got a 1.9 WAR in his limited time. I mean, he was called up to AAA by Los Angeles just before we traded for him, and he continued his success with us. Really love that player clutch getting into the pitching clutch, getting into the 70s, and just need to work on that home run per 9. Honestly, I think he's another guy who's at least one more year in the minor league system, but after that, if he can get another good boost to home runs per 9, I can absolutely see Gordon Pringle making the call up. Cole McCracken, not what you're hoping for from him. Dusty Coleman, all right. These are a couple of guys that could be called up to the bullpen, as with JJ Ramirez. But no rush there. We have some higher profile bullpen arms. Switching over now to AA. Unfortunately, Rico Salazar ends the year on a cold streak, but he hit 18 homers here, got plus 10 total to his power, which you gotta love that. Play skills coming up pretty good as well. He's a guy who I thought we'd maybe rush a little bit, but with Zach Veen having a breakout year last year, and we didn't really need to call him up, and Zach Veen really struggled again at the beginning of this year, but ended up, not having the worst of years, so we're good there. No rush with him, but he's certainly ready to be AAA next year at the very least, which I think is the plan with him right now. Benji Avalos, another guy probably going to get the call up to AAA. At this point, just looking like a rock solid defender. I don't know if the offense will ever come along. Plus 7 contact versus lefties is certainly nice, but I mean, he started with his contact versus right and his power right versus right in the 50s, and it's still in the 50s after 2 years of development, which I think has to be a disappointment for him. We can really use some bats that hit really well against righties, and he just hasn't developed as quickly as I would have hoped for Benji. I was really excited when we drafted him, but with the drafting of Richie James, Kyle Brown becoming pretty good, and with Sterling Thompson's insane power surge this year, it's looking more and more unlikely that Benji Avalos has a future starting role with our team. Carlos Cortez only see potential, but man, plus 11 power with only 8 home runs. That's pretty interesting here. I don't think he got injured a little bit. He didn't have a major injury, but really good contact versus lefties. And before we drafted Richie James, he was probably our best base runner that we had on the team. Ralph Gilmore here. He is looking for a AAA call-up next year for sure. Sub 1 whip is awesome for him. Plus 5 walks per 9. You love to see it. Plus 5 pitcher clutch. You absolutely love to see it. Finally getting control into the 40s as well, so that should help with his consistency. Alex Cruz here. Another just backup future outfielder for us, but like the season that we saw from him. Raymond Park is really bad. That's all I can really say. He hasn't shown any ability. I mean, he was a super long-term project when we drafted him, and just hasn't done enough developing yet. Plus 7 strikeouts per 9 for Eric Suzuki is really nice. 6'5", 240 pounds, a big man. A lot of these guys at this point are guys that we haven't ever seen play baseball. It's just a factor of the MLB, squad becoming the squad that we focus the most on at this point in the series, with most of our high-level prospects being on that team. But we still have some guys to get excited about coming through the pipeline. Gilmore, Salazar, Avalos, if something goes wrong, I still have hope for him. Suzuki, Ungerer, Hernandez, Rocha, Pringle. I mean, we still got a lot of stuff to be excited about in the minor league system. And there you have it. And the season comes to a close. The Rockies win 93 games, 69 losses. Nice. And for the first time in their team's history, have won the NL West. It took nearly 40 years to do it, but the Rockies are on top of the division, using only the amateur draft to get there, with, I guess, a couple of Rule 5 draft picks as well. But this was, the first goal that we set out on. Certainly not the end game goal of this franchise, but winning the division was kind of the first hurdle that I wanted to get over in this franchise, and we've officially done it and clinched a playoff berth. Colorado is in the playoffs. Rocktober is upon us. And it's time to take a look at the stats here of our Major League squad. Rafael Murillo ends the season at 97 overall. He has 41 homers. He responded to going under 30 last year for the first time, with going over 40 this year to make up for it. 107 RBIs is his best. He had one less walk than last year, but also struck out the most since his first season. 320 is his second best. On base over 400 is excellent and his best. Slugging at 650 for an OPS well over 1,000. That did actually come down though over the last couple of months. He was absolutely scorching, so I'm not surprised he couldn't keep it up for an entire season. But an 8.0 batting WAR is insane. You'll love to see it. The isolated power much higher than it has been in the past. At-bats per home run much higher than it has been in the past as well. Rafael Murillo responded to maybe a slightly disappointing season last year with his best one yet at the age of 22. An MVP candidate all along the way. We'll see in just a moment whether or not he won it, Neil Dorsey won it, or if a surprise candidate came up in the month of September. Chase Dollander ends the year at 90 overall. Lost his stamina and didn't get much better across the board. I do believe 90 is his potential, so this is the player we're going to get. And a 3.73 ERA with a 1.35 whip, exactly matching last year. So this is probably going to be the player we get with Chase Dollander, and I'm totally fine if we can get this caliber of season from Chase for the remainder of his time with this team. WAR does go down a little bit, just didn't strike as many people out, walked a few more people. Home runs per 9, another stat exactly the same as last year. So Chase Dollander, excellent player, I think, and somebody that I'm happy to have fill that ace role until we get Jose Barreto ready for it. Ethan Salas ended up getting that average over 250, which is an improvement on last year. He just turned things on a bit towards the end of the season. Unfortunately, his home runs, not as good. Tied for his career low in that department. Walked the most times in his career and struck out less than last year. So certainly not a terrible, year by any means, especially considering just how good of a fielder this guy is. It's his second highest WAR season. And while he hasn't been providing the offense that I was hoping he would, a guy that I thought could hit, fifth in the lineup, maybe even second in the lineup, somewhere around there was when I traded for him. The vision probably going to be hitting in that lower third of the lineup for this playoff run, and the further we go along in this series, it's going to be harder and harder to crack the top half of this lineup, and he might just never be that kind of offensive player for us. And honestly, even though it's going to be an overpay with where he hits in the lineup, I'm still fine. That's still going to be a really good catcher. Somebody who can provide excellent defense and just is solid offensively, not a liability. Honestly, that might be all we need from Ethan Salas. And probably at this point, that's all I'm expecting from him. Next year, all of his fielding attributes are going to be in the 90s, which is going to be insane. Clemente Herrera, really, really, really good rookie season, overshadowed by the MVP candidate Neil Dorsey, but contact versus lefties is into the 90s now. Contact versus righties is into the 80s, plus 15 contact overall with a 320 season is absolutely great. Also added a 20 home run season, which I'm super, stoked about that. Was not expecting a 20 home run season from him. I mean, he has good power against lefties, but you face a lot more righties. Got better at hitting righties for power this year. High 800 on the OPS for a rookie season is really, really good with a 3.9 WAR. He's somebody that we have to consider maybe signing to a long-term deal. Not going to be, 15 years in the case of Herrera. He's just a little bit older. Or maybe a 10-year deal for Herrera here in the offseason, I think could be a worthy investment for this ball club. You have to pick and choose. You can't just pay everybody on the long-term deal, because You just don't have the budget for the most part to pay every single player. But I think Clemente Herrera is somebody that could be worth paying. Sterling Thompson here ends the season with 33 home runs, getting plus 14 to power versus righties. Now matching his contact. This is a guy that was strictly contact when we started this franchise. And plus 10 power versus lefties to get him to 66, which is 22 higher than his contact for lefties. So really weird year, really weird kind of career arc for Sterling Thompson. His average goes down every single year, but his power goes up. He doubled it last year, nearly doubled it again this year. And it's kind of the second year in a row that we drafted somebody that looked like the replacement for one of our year one prospects. Just didn't look like it might not work out. And then they go on this insane run and hit for a ton of power. I think Zach Veen's breakout year was better last year because he also hit 33 home runs, but he hit it at, in the 270s for his average. So not maybe quite as good of a year. In fact, his WAR went down this year. Just wasn't nearly as good of a defender, which is kind of surprising because that is a strength of his for sure. But hit nukes for us this year, and that's one of the cores all the way dating back to episode number 1. It was power, pitching, and plate skills. So I'll take some more power here. I think the team needed another power hitter while we were kind of waiting for some of our other power hitters to get up to the major league squad. Kyle Brown, 277 average, is a dip from last season. OPS down 10 points isn't a really big dip. He did hit 4 more triples and 2 more homers this year. Batted in 24 more runs and ended up with a WAR a little bit worse than last year. Still a player that I think is dependable, especially I think defensively. Let's see if it was true for the whole season. His fielding percentage actually was slightly down, but pretty much the same as last year. But just in the games that we watched, much less mistake prone. Did make a mistake, what we just watched, but all of the other episodes didn't really see him make mistakes defensively, which we had seen a lot of the previous season. So Kyle Brown, I wouldn't say, this is the guy that I'm going to start looking at paying long term. I still think who ends up being the long-term infielders around Rafael Murillo is something that I'm not quite sure of yet. Who ends up where, who ends up starting, who ends up leaving. But Kyle Brown, I'm comfortable with him. I trust him when he's up to the plate in these games. Jose Barreto, 3.73 ERA, 1.29 WHIP. Another really good rookie campaign. It's not easy to pitch in Colorado, but some of these guys are making it look not as hard as you might think it would be. 188 innings for him here in his rookie year. And 19 quality starts, had a complete game shutout in that. 1.3 WAR. A little low, but it's just because he's not the WAR-friendly pitcher. He's not a strikeout pitcher, and WAR loves that. I mean, small sample size last year, but a really good improvement here in home runs per 9. I would like that to be a little bit closer to 1, and I think it will be as his career goes along. He's still got a lot of potential improvement for him to go up. He's 85, but he has high potential. We drafted him, of course, with max potential, but we'll see if he's still there. He could have dropped maybe a potential or 2, but still gonna have a really high ceiling. Has a lot of improving to do. Nothing below the 60s at this point is quite good. Could maybe even get some stuff into the 80s next year if he has a good year of development. Now it's time to talk about Neil Dorsey, a bunch of people's favorite player in the franchise, and I can't blame him. He is incredibly exciting. Hit the ground running here in his rookie year. And pitching wise, I mean, next year will likely have everything in the 60s. He's kind of honestly looks like a year behind Jose Barreto is what I'm seeing in a lot of these ratings here. So love to see that. Plus 10 power versus lefties. Another guy who just hits better against lefties in simulation. That just is the theme of this series, but still very good against righties. 91 contact, 83 power is really good. So 3.73 ERA, 1.27 WHIP, had a complete game shutout, had 18 quality starts, 2.4 WAR. That's the home run per 9 that I really like to see. Very surprised that he was able to do so good, lettering home runs this year. Walks per 9 under 3 is excellent. Strikeouts per 9 not great, but we don't. This team doesn't strike people out. That's not the pitching style that we have gone after the most here in this franchise. But with his ceiling, he could always develop it. Now, as a hitter, 45 home runs on the board, 125 RBIs for him. Excellent stuff. 306 average, slugging 568, over a 900 OPS. Absolutely hitting bombs with a 5.8 batting WAR. So his total WAR 5.8 plus we got 2.4. I mean, that's 8.2 WAR total, which would be just over Rafael Murillo's 8.0. Reyes and Doe ends on a hot streak, hit 3 home runs, 235 average here. Ends up +4 contact versus righties, and then his power netted itself out. But really good development with the plate skills this year, which he really needed. And we'll see if hitting in cores full time can help boost his power development going forward. But I'm excited for the future of Reyes and Doe. It was a long road to get here. All the way back in the first draft is when we selected this player. Happy to finally have him be a member of the squad. Zach Veen did not have a good start to the year, but he sure did end it in a really solid spot. Ends up with a +11 total to his hitting versus righties. You love to see it. Ends up, not having as good of a year as last year, but honestly, it wasn't as big of a drop off as I was expecting it to be for most of the year. Still ends up with an OPS over 800 for the second consecutive year. Really trying to show that he should be considered a long-term player for this squad and not just somebody that is here until Rico Salazar is ready, which I feel like was the case when we drafted Rico, but he's making it hard, the decision between Veen and Rico Salazar long-term. In terms of team control, we still got 3 years of team control with Zach Veen. Jimmy Blanco pitched 14 and a third innings here in September. Ends up with +5 walks per 9 on the year. His hits per 9 were going down for most of the year. It's no longer going down. And he's somebody that, even though it's a small sample size, I think has earned a spot on the playoff roster in our bullpen. And gonna have a bright future for us. Multi-inning potential with that 44 stamina. I've had him in the long reliever spots, and he pitched well there. And another guy who pitched well, Phil Gorzelski, who was on the Major League squad for the whole year, pitched 44 innings in the end and was really good in them. A sub-1 whip, 95 hits per 9 he's up to now, with walks per 9 and strikeouts per 9 also in the 70s, home runs per 9 also in the high 60s at this point. Really good looking pitcher. Now, this is probably the guy with this skill set most similar to Robbie Barreto. It's been brought up in previous episodes if we should, break the 3-trade rule to trade for Robbie Barreto. We're trying to do it in the most fair way possible, or, we're technically breaking the rule, but it's not making us that much better. I think Phil Gorzelski is the most comparable pitcher and will likely be the guy we send, which would be unfortunate because of how well he pitched, but of course we'd also be getting a really good player back. But so we'll see if he's on the team long term, but I would not be sad if he is. He pitched well. Next up, we've got Logan Cerny, who got replaced late in the season with Reyes and Doe. I still have not made the decision who's going to play center field for us in the playoffs. Reyes and Doe wasn't particularly awesome in his month of action, but Cerny's no great offensive player either. However, he has proven in this series he is very much so a good defensive player. And now Reyes and Doe has fielding and speed, very comparable to Logan Cerny. Cerny has the better arm in the outfield. We've just seen it with Cerny, whereas with Reyes and Doe, it's more of a projection. So do you go high risk, high upside in the playoffs with Reyes and Doe, or do you go the more safe option? I want to hear your thoughts. Who would you have play center field for us in this season's playoff run. Cerny kind of the last position player out of Rule 5 draft picks with a roll. So if we give it to Brian Doe, that's kind of the end of the Rule 5 era. But not saying that that's a bad thing. The Rule 5 era was always meant to be temporary when I started this franchise. Rich Walsh here pitched just 4 innings here, had 7 strikeouts in them. Allowed 2 home runs though, which isn't great. And in terms of his upgrades, plus 4 home runs per 9, awesome, even despite the struggles in his 4 innings in the major league level. Still think he's going to be on the roster for the playoffs just because, I mean, that 98 strikeouts per 9 is just insane and a skill set that we do not have on the team. Omar Figueroa just continues to get kind of worse every single season. I mean, his average went up last year, which I was excited about, but he had his worst average and his worst home runs this year. I mean, on just like 20 fewer at-bats than he's had in the past. And I think he's not gonna be a long-term guy for us. His potential is 80, but I don't know if the game's just like not letting him develop, because I said it at the beginning of last year and he just hasn't actually gone up to his potential, despite the fact that you only need to go up 2 overall to get there. So I don't know if it's kind of broken. His WAR is only half of his previous worst season. And so really opening the door for the future of first base. We do have Juan Rocha already in the building for that spot. But Rocha can also play a couple of other positions. So maybe first base is a position that we can look for in the next couple of years in the draft. Jeff Ramirez, 3.14 ERA, 1.15 WHIP in 66 innings. Much better than he showed last year, and he got some big time development because of it. Hits per 9 into the 80s, strikeouts per 9 pretty much there as well. Home runs per 9 plus 7. Absolutely love to see it. 1.15 WHIP is by far his best, other than this small sample size theater from his first time. Easily his best WAR season. Strikeouts per 9, way above what he's done in the past. Home runs per 9, less than 1. That's why you get the plus 7, baby. Great season from Jeff Ramirez. Drew Romo had 35 at-bats as a backup catcher. Mauri Lozano, pretty similar to, I was going to say whip-wise to his first season, but first season did have a much better ERA, though. He's kind of just become an okay pitcher. At this point, he's going to have to do really well over the next couple of years if he's going to get, signed onto the team past our team control, but he's good enough that we should keep him through the team control years, at least for now. And that pretty much does it for our major league roster. I mean, Devin Smeltzer, the same player we've had ever since he got onto the team. He's had his whip in the 1.3s every single year. The absolute model of consistency here, and really the only lefty we've had on the team until we called up Herb Reyes, who I believe was sent back down, so we should take a look at him. The game sent him down automatically. He had a 4.54 ERA and a 1.43 WHIP in September. Had a positive WAR for us, but does he get to pitch in the playoffs? I think it would be valuable to have a second lefty on the team alongside Smeltzer. So I'll have to work out who we send down to bring Herb Reyes up, but I do think I want that second lefty on the team. Maybe as a long reliever rather than in the starting rotation, I could see for Herb Reyes this season. But let me know what you think about center field, about maybe Herb Reyes, where he should pitch, and just any other general thoughts you have for the playoffs. And I'll either implement them or I'll tell you why I decided not to. But we have the number 2 seed in the NL. We will be facing the winner of the St. Louis Cardinals and the Chicago Cubs series. The Dodgers and the Phillies will be facing off in the wild card for the rights to go against the absolutely loaded Atlanta Braves team. And then over in the AL, we got the Angels at the number 1 spot. They had some insane pitching this year. Baltimore in number 2. Yankees and Rangers face off for the rights to go against the Angels, and the White Sox and Detroit. We're deep into a franchise when those guys are making the playoffs. They are facing off for the right to go against the Orioles. Now it's time to see some league leaders and some awards. Let's first go through the league leaders here. Neil Dorsey leads the NL in home runs. Murillo leads in slugging percentage, on-base percentage, and batting WAR for the season. He ends up not getting the batting title. That goes to Corbin Carroll, and actually Clemente Herrera ends up being right there with Rafael Murillo. His batting average did drop off by the end of the year. Neil Dorsey ends up being second in the NL in hits. We've got home runs. Neil Dorsey, we saw that. Neil Dorsey's also third in RBIs. And now let's take a look at the awards, see just what we won here in the season. Hank Aaron Award goes to Rafael Murillo. NL Rookie of the Year goes to Neil Dorsey. And your National League MVP goes to rookie two-way generational star, Neil Dorsey. Shout out to Paul in the comments, who before his rookie year even began was saying that Neil Dorsey would be an MVP. I tried to say maybe not to have as big of expectations. I knew he was going to be an MVP candidate someday, but as a rookie, winning MVP in the NL is absolutely insane, man. O'Neal Cruz of the Yankees ends up winning MVP of the American League here. Cy Young goes to, what? Dude, the Braves are insane. They have the top 3 Cy Young vote getters. Are you kidding me? This is the team. If we end up winning our first playoff series, I would be shocked if we don't go against the Braves. We saw their insane hitting lineup, and then they have the top 3 Cy Young candidates this year. And then Cease, I was saying the Angels had insane pitching. I knew these two have been at the top of the AL Cy Young all year long. For batting title goes to Corbin Carroll. Again, we had second and third place there, which is pretty insane. Crochet, another insane pitcher for the Angels. He's been at the top all year. Bednar wins it for the National League. Rookie of the Year is Neil Dorsey, and of course Clemente Herrera is going to be second place. Wins it 9 times out of 10 years, I would say. Hank Aaron, we knew it was Murillo. Also, we got Gold Glove pitcher goes to Dwayne Perry. There you go. Neil Dorsey in third place. Let's just see. We got second place in Gold Glove catcher here. We've got any other Gold Gloves? I don't think we have any, spectacular defenders. I'm not surprised. There's nothing there. Silver Slugger DH, Neil Dorsey. Anybody else got close? Kyle Brown in third place. Rafael Murillo only in second place for Silver Slugger, despite winning the Hank Aaron Award. It is interesting. And there you have it. There's the stats and awards ahead of the postseason. And the last thing I want to do here on the episode, I want to figure out who it is we'll be facing. It'll be the St. Louis Cardinals, who we will face off against in the first playoff series of this draft-only franchise. Let's take a look at the guys we will be facing off against. Jordan Walker at age 26, up to an 89 overall. He hit 30 homers for the second time in his career this year. We know how good Jordan Walker is. Can absolutely mash right-handed pitching, which is pretty much all of our pitching. Got the plate skills here. Got an insanely strong arm. Dylan Carlson, better against lefties. Josh Naylor, that's kind of funny. He's on the Cardinals, much like he is in Von Rye's St. Louis franchise. Jojo Romero, really good reliever here. We got Nolan Gorman at 28 years old. He had himself a 52 home run season earlier on in the franchise. Hasn't quite been the same yet since. Hasn't been able to even pass 30 home runs, which is why his power is regressing pretty heavily this year. Mason Wynn, up to an 86 in this franchise. Really strong arm, good defender, solid contact, and not even terrible with power either. And, a team that at this point, much better at the position player spots than they are the pitching. They actually have the best lefty pitcher that's been drafted in this franchise as well, with Macias here. But this team is much better at hitting lefties than we are righties, so I think that could come into play. Jerpy here might hit in their starting lineup as well, which would have 2 lefties and 3 righties here. But nobody above an 83 overall in their pitching staff, other than, you know, Romero, who's going to be a reliever and also is a lefty, which is good for us. So I think we have a good chance to hit well off of them. It's just, do we have the pitching to keep this offense down? Because they have a lot of good players here. Luis Urias, had him in my Athletics franchise. He was a player that I love to hit with. So a lot of good players here, especially position players for St. Louis. This could be a very high scoring series. I am very excited to introduce playoff baseball here in the series. Now, I'm not 100% sure how I want to present playoff baseball episodically. My thought is we'll go... I don't want to tip anyone off as to the result of elimination games is my number one goal here. So I'm thinking, you know, this is a best of 5 series. At the very least, we'll see the first 2 games, maybe the first 3, because the earliest you can have an elimination game is the 3rd game. But then every single time there's an elimination game, it's going to be the last game of an episode, so as to not, again, tip you off as to the results, you know, with the length of the video. So that's kind of my loose plan. If you have any suggestions for how to present playoffs with these series, then I'm all ears. But that's all I got for this episode. We'll be back soon with more franchise playoffs for the first time in our series, and I'll see you then. Go Rockies.